Once upon a time, long, long ago, there were many kings in the land. 4 of these kings were very powerful and came from far away. Their names were big and sounded very important: Amraphel, Arioch, Chedorlaomer, and Tidal. These 4 kings had ruled over another group of 5 kings for a very long time. For 12 whole years the 5 kings did everything the big 4 kings told them to do. They paid them money and gave them food. They were not happy, but they did what they were told because they were afraid of the bigger, stronger kings. But one day, the 5 kings decided they had had enough. They were tired of being bossed around. These kings were from the cities of Sodom, Gomorrah, Admah, Zeboiim, and Bela. They gathered together and whispered, "We will not serve King Chedorlaomer anymore." It was a brave thing to say, but also a very dangerous one. They stopped sending their treasures and waited. They hoped the big kings would just leave them alone. But that is not what happened. Their brave choice would lead to a very big fight that would change everything for many people. When the 4 powerful kings heard this news, they were not happy at all. How dare those smaller kings disobey them? King Chedorlaomer was especially angry, so he called his friends, the other 3 kings, and they gathered all their soldiers. They marched their big armies for a very long way, getting ready for a great battle. They were strong and they were cross, and they wanted to teach the 5 kings a lesson they would never ever forget. They planned to show everyone that no one could ever say no to them. It was a scary time for the whole land. So, the 4 kings marched their armies all the way to a place called the Valley of Siddim. This valley was a strange place, full of sticky tar pits like big puddles of black glue. The 5 kings saw the big armies coming and gathered their own soldiers to fight. It was a huge battle. The sounds of shouting and clanging swords filled the air. The 5 kings and their armies stood together, ready to fight for their freedom. They were hoping and praying they could win, but the other kings were so much stronger, and had come so very far just to fight them. The battle was fierce, but it did not last long. The armies of the 4 kings were too mighty. They pushed the soldiers of the 5 kings back right into the sticky tar pits. Many of the soldiers from Sodom and Gomorrah fell into the gooey pits and couldn't get out. The rest of their armies saw this and were so scared they ran away. They ran up into the mountains to hide, leaving their cities and all their homes behind. The big, powerful kings had won the fight, just as they had planned. The valley was quiet now, except for the celebrating of the winning soldiers. After the battle, the 4 kings went into the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah. Since they had won, they believed everything in the cities now belonged to them. They took all the food they could find and all the treasure, the gold, the silver, and all the precious things. They packed it all up to take back to their own lands. The people who lived in the cities were very sad and scared. They had lost their soldiers and now they were losing all their food and their valuable possessions. It was a very terrible day for them, a day of great loss and sorrow. But the kings took something even more important than treasure. They took people. They captured many people from the city of Sodom to be their servants, and one of the people they captured was a man named Lot. Lot was Abram's nephew, the son of his brother. He had been living in the wicked city of Sodom with his family. Now, he was a prisoner. The soldiers tied him up and forced him to march away with them. Lot must have been so afraid, wondering what would happen to him and if he would ever see his home or his uncle Abram again. One man managed to escape from the battle and the city. He ran and ran as fast as his legs could carry him. He knew he had to find Abram. He had very important, very bad news to share. Abram was living peacefully by the great trees of Mamre. He didn't know about the big fight or that his dear nephew Lot was in terrible danger. The man who escaped kept running, his heart pounding. He had to reach Abram. He had to tell him that Lot had been captured by the mean kings and was being taken far, far away. When the man finally reached Abram and told him the terrible news, Abram's heart was filled with sadness and worry. His nephew, his family, was a prisoner. Abram didn't waste a single moment. He didn't just sit and worry. No, he decided to do something. He was going to rescue Lot. Abram looked at the men who lived with him. He had 318 trained servants, men who were strong and loyal to him. He gathered them all together. He told them they were going on a very important and dangerous mission. They were going to chase after those big, mean kings. Abram knew he couldn't do it alone, even with his 318 men. So he asked his good friends for help. His friends were brothers named Mamre, Eshcol, and Aner. They were his allies, people who had promised to help him if he ever needed it. When they heard what had happened to Lot, they said, "Yes, Abram, we will go with you." So Abram, his trained men, and his good friends all joined together. They formed a small but very brave army. They grabbed their weapons and started to chase after the 4 kings who had stolen Lot. They chased the kings all the way to a place called Dan. Abram was very clever. He knew his small army couldn't fight the big army all at once, so he came up with a secret plan. He waited until it was nighttime, when the sky was dark and filled with stars. Then he divided his men into small groups. They snuck up on the king's camp from all different sides. It was a surprise attack. The kings and their soldiers were sleepy and weren't expecting a fight. Suddenly, Abram's men rushed in, shouting and fighting with all their might. The surprise worked perfectly. The king's army was confused and scared. They didn't know how many people were attacking them in the dark. They started to run away. Abram and his men chased them, making sure they didn't stop. They chased them all the way past a city called Damascus. Abram had won. He had beaten the 4 big, powerful kings who had just beaten 5 other kings, and most importantly, he had rescued his nephew Lot. He also got back all the people and all the treasure that the kings had stolen from Sodom and Gomorrah. On his way back home, feeling happy and thankful, Abram met someone very special. It was a king named Melchizedek. He was the king of a city called Salem, which means peace. But he wasn't just a king. He was also a priest of God Most High, the God who made the heavens and the earth. He was a king who loved God. Melchizedek saw what Abram had done and knew that God had helped him. He came out to meet Abram, not with weapons, but with gifts of peace. He brought out bread and wine to refresh Abram and his tired men. Melchizedek then gave Abram a wonderful blessing. He lifted his hands and said, "Blessed be Abram by God Most High, creator of heaven and earth, and praise be to God Most High, who has delivered your enemies into your hand." He was reminding Abram that it wasn't just Abram's clever plan or his brave men that won the battle. It was God. God had given him the victory. Abram knew this was true. He was so thankful for this blessing from this special king and priest. So Abram gave Melchizedek 1/10 of everything he had rescued. Then another king came to meet Abram. It was the king of Sodom, one of the kings who had lost the battle. He was so grateful to Abram for getting his people and his things back. He said to Abram, "Give me my people, but you can keep all the treasure for yourself. You deserve it." But Abram shook his head. "No," he said. He lifted his hand to heaven and made a promise to God. "I will not take anything that is yours," he told the king. "Not even a thread or a shoelace. I don't want you to ever say, 'I made Abram rich.'" Abram knew where his blessings came from. They didn't come from the king of Sodom or from the treasures of war. His blessings came from God. He trusted God to take care of him and give him everything he needed. He only took the food his young men had eaten and the share that belonged to his friends Aner, Eshcol, and Mamre. Abram's brave and generous choice showed everyone that his trust was in God alone. And this story reminds us, just like it reminded the people back then, that trusting God is the most important thing. He is the one who gives us true blessings and real riches.